Hello guys, how are you? Welcome to the week number 2 of this class. First of all, I want to thank you for all your advances and attention of the week number 1. I was able to revise most of the assignments that you have already sent. I am doing this video in advance, so of course the deadline is not yet finished. But I have seen that most of you have been able to do a very good job about that. A very good job. I have some comments in some of the assignments, but they are there, so please revise them. And I have some. I think that there are very few general comments, so I will wait for everybody to deliver the assignments, and if necessary, I will create an extra post or an extra video, like giving general ideas about your work. Nevertheless, the first part, the one about the definitions and the examples, mostly was really good, and the second one as well. I see that most of you, at least the people who have already delivered the work, well, you have been doing a good analysis of the book that you have selected. Okay, very well. So I would like to start this lesson as usual by sharing with you a poem. This is a poem about cats. I really like cats. I like dogs as well, but I travel a lot, and dogs require a little bit more of attention. Okay, so I have cats. This is a poem called Night by Louise Weekly McKay. Night. My kitten walks on velvet feet and makes no sound at all, and in the doorway nightly sits to watch the darkness fall. I think he loves the lady, Night, and feels akin to her, whose footsteps are still as his, whose touch as soft as fur. Nice. This is actually in this comic book from the Crow. Sorry, that is one of the masterpieces of James O'Barr, and there's even a really nice picture of Eric Draven the Crow with a kitten over here with a cat. So it's really nice. Hope you have enjoyed that. And it's a really comic book that, by the way, it is on the list of list of books. So maybe you could select it. Very well, guys. So we are going to the slide number. Let me see. Slide number 20. That talks about choosing text, and this is really important, guys. Remember that the whole point of this assignment of this subject is to be able to use some literary materials, novels, texts, tales, poems, fragments of different narrative pieces, in order to teach something related to language, right? To teach vocabulary or a grammar component, or reading skills, or anything else. So choosing those texts is really, really important. I have seen in my experience as a student, specifically, just when I used to receive classes in school or later on at the university, by the experience of some colleagues, and of course by some mistakes that I committed when I was learning, that I don't know, at least 50% of the problems that you are going to face, you can solve, or you can prevent, by choosing a text correctly. Okay, so if you choose a wrong text from the very beginning, you're going to have a lot of trouble, right? Because you're going to try to make up for the mistakes of that selection, and that can be problematic, and you will be all the time trying to minimize the impact of those mistakes. Mistakes related to a lot of different things, right? But basically, if you choose a text that is not suitable for you, and especially for your students, it's going to be a nightmare. Okay, so hopefully this part, or this let's say moment of the lesson, it's going to be addressed to that, to make sure that you have some elements evaluated, assessed before really selecting the let's say the text. So if you go to the slide number 21, we are going to see about the needs and abilities, right? Now, before starting that, I would like to make a huge emphasis on this. Yes, and it's not there because it seems to be so evident and so obvious. Nevertheless, I think I have to mention that, and it's that you, as a teacher, you have to read the book. Yes, you have to read the book in advance. You need to know what does it contain, what is it about, what can be expected, a lot of different things, right? And believe it or not, many teachers don't do that. Yes, so don't be the teacher. Don't be the teacher that just selects a book randomly because I don't know, the cover looked nice, or because somebody else said, well, this is a great book. Suggestions are nice, right? But you have to check them. Or because it is popular and there's a movie about it, or there's a TV series about it, and maybe you watch the movie or the TV series and you somehow like it. Always read the book in advance, okay? You don't have to read the whole book. Probably you can read a couple of pages, a random page, and then decide if you think that it's worth your time, okay? But it's very important. There are a lot of very unpleasant experiences that teachers have suffered for not reading the book in advance. Yes, I know the case of, for example, a teacher who assigned a book that was supposed to be on adventure to his or her students. I think it was 7th or 8th grade, I guess. And I don't know, he had like this general idea that it was an adventure book, like fantastic, supernatural, something like that. And then, after all the books were bought, yes, because it was a school, so the school bought the books or made the students buy the book, original, not photocopies or anything like that. Well, everybody started realizing, well, everybody who read it started realizing that the book had a high sexual content. Yes, it was pretty explicit in some parts, which it's okay, you know, like eroticism is fine, and actually it has pushed literature into the future, but well, it's not suitable for kids, for children, especially for children who study in a school of a certain religious orientation, for example. That will be a nightmare, right? And even worse, if we can call it that way, some of these explicit sexual situations had homosexual connotations, okay? Again, there's nothing wrong about that. But for the age, for the public, for the parents, for the, the directors of the school, it was a complete scandal. So, well, hopefully you don't have that sort of problem, and make sure that you make a good decision, okay? So, let's go to the slide number 21. And there are some of the aspects that we are going to take into account, that we are going to revise. And the first of them is needs and abilities, okay? What do students need and what do they know already? Yes, like what is their level of command of the language, if they have any. Yes, most of them do. If you're going to assign them a book, it's because they have at least the basics of present simple, or well, different skills depending of the grade or of the semester or the level, if we're talking about the language center. So why are they studying English? Yes, what are their needs? It is different that some students are studying English in a school, for example, where it's a mandatory subject and everybody has to study it, period. Yes, so you need to somehow convince them that it's something good. Yes, of course there will be always some kids that like it, some other kids that it's the same for them, some other kids that really hate it. So that about needs. What about the ones who are taking that in a language center, right, or an institution or something like that, an English institute? Well, many of them are as well like sent by their parents. They are like forced over there. But then there are some other people who are studying for business reasons because they want to get a promotion in their jobs. Some of them are really concerned about learning their survival English because they are taking a trip, a vacation trip or a business trip, or going to live forever in another country. Well, different reasons, right? So those are the needs that you need to evaluate, yes? depending on those needs, your reading selections may be different, right? Those may be or may have some different connotations. And then the abilities, that is very important, and I don't have to tell you that. You are, let's say, always required to pay attention to that. Sorry, my cat is doing something in here. I'll be back in a minute, okay? Okay, back. So, cats, so that's it. The abilities. Always verify that these students that you're going to have the possibility of reading the book. Of course, it is a really subtle, let's say, barrier between a very challenging book that can frustrate somebody and a really easy book that can frustrate as well, because they're not going to read it to learn anything from it, anything new, I mean, in terms of vocabulary or language. So it's important to know that, okay? So let's take a look at some of the items that are over there. We have the linguistic and stylistic level of the text. Linguistic and style, or language and style, are two different things, right? So language can be easy or difficult, right? And I think that we are somehow acquainted to that already. But style is another thing. You get to know or to be aware of style only if you are a reader already, right? So you will notice that some writers, for example, write mostly in first person or in second person, or that they introduce their characters, or that they simply, I start a chapter and then I realize that somebody's speaking and I thought that it was the narrator or the character that finished in the previous chapter, but no, then I realized that with no introduction, with no anticipation, the writer starts like writing through the voice of another person. Let's imagine that chapter 1 was a boy and chapter 2 was a girl or an old man or another boy, different from the first one. So even if the language is easy, if they use these resources, it may get problematic. It doesn't mean that you should avoid those books. No, like they can be an interesting opportunity for getting to know different things. For example, teaching something about pronouns, right? First person, second person, third person, plural, singular. That would be really nice for it. But you need to be aware of it, right? And you need to be ready for questions. Because, you look really bad as a teacher when somebody asks you and you are not able to answer about something that you were supposed to have prepared. It is okay to know, not knowing the answers to many questions that we are asked as teachers. Like, we're not supposed to know everything, right? But when there's something like this that you were supposed to prepare, that sort of gives the student a lack of confidence on the teacher, and that would be a terrible way to start, right? So that about linguistic and stylistics. Now, the next part that is really important, it's the amount of background information that is required for the true appreciation of the material. So, what else do I need to read or know about this book in order to enjoy it, pretty much? So let me give you a very extreme example. Let's say The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, yes, by Mark Twain. That is the same author of Tom Sawyer. That I guess you know that story, have seen the cartoons or movies or things like that. Well, this is a really difficult book in terms of language, because they reproduce exactly the jargon of the African American people of the time that were slaves. I think I showed you a little bit of that in the previous lesson of last week. So on that part, it's difficult. On the part of the style, it can also be a little bit difficult because, for example, he likes to write very big paragraphs that can be annoying somehow, that can be difficult to read because it's a lot of letters, as many of you say. Ese libro tiene muchas letras. Yeah, something like that. So the visual impression that you project is that you open the book And if you see all of that in a small letter, well, it's a complete rejection for many people, right? Um, but besides that, to completely like understand what is happening, you would require to know a little bit about the America's, let's say, slavery process and liberation of the slaves, the freedom, civil war, the customs of the times of Louisiana, things like that, right? If you don't read that, well, sure, you may understand the story, and that will be self-sufficient. But if you know about that, so you're going to know a little bit better some other details, right? So in order to read that book, it would be a great idea to read some more about some other things, or to watch a video about the time and about the writer and about the reaction of the people towards the book and everything else. And all that is very nice, right? But that will demand additional time. That is some time that you have and some time that you are willing to spend on this extra preparation. Yes? Imagine the reaction of some of your students. Oh, okay, so I don't have to read this book, but besides, I have to read this, and this, and even watch a video. Yes, for many of them, it will be an instant rejection, right? Or the alternative is not reading anything and then getting directly into the book and not getting it. Yes, not being able to understand that much. So you decide, right? So that was a very extreme examples. Not many of them are there, but that is something that you require to somehow decide or examine before getting into these different, let's say, selection, right? Now, some books demand definitely to know a little bit of them. But you can minimize the effort of the students, right? You can, as I mentioned, just play a short YouTube video for them, right? That's 5 minutes and has animation and, cartoons or that is visually attractive music, not like my videos that is just me speaking in front of you. People who have more time do better things, much better things in terms of edition, right? So you can do that, and you will save the time for the student to somehow dedicate extra time to that, because they have other subjects and they have other things to do in their lives, or even if they definitely have to read anything, so you yourself can create a little summary or download it from somewhere else, something that is essential and then that can give the kid like the possibility of being able to do that, right? So, for example, if you're reading the Portrait of Dorian Gray, it would be a minimum thing, to know a little bit of the period, of the Victorian period that they are doing over there, how was the interaction of people, to know a little bit about painting, costumes, things like that, right? Now, there are some books that are so friendly that they don't really need any sort of introduction or any sort of additional material, and that will be fine, yes? So you really need to analyze this in advance, okay? Now, if we go into the slide number 22, let's say that students' needs and abilities are really important, no? And here we have a really tough call, right? And it's, what are their age, interests, and goals? Well, it's a really difficult and tough situation, right? Because age doesn't really guarantee that everybody liked the same thing. Just think about yourself in the school, how you were, like what sort of music did you like, what sort of activities did you prefer, and this is as somehow varied and abundant as it can be. Yes, there are people of the same age who like sports, or who like rock, or who like reggaeton, or who prefer staying at home playing video games, or who are on the age of hitting on girls and boys, who like to party or drinking, or etc. Right? So it's really difficult to provide something that everybody loves, and you really have to release that weight and say, start from the beginning and accept that, like you cannot please everybody. Like the best way to be unhappy is try to please everybody. To please everybody. Peace. Okay. Because that will be, punishing yourself because your students didn't like it, or because students are saying that your book is boring. For many people, for many teachers especially, like saying that listening to a side comment that a student made, saying that whatever he did is boring, and it's what a yawn, and etc. It will hurt his or her feelings. No, so forget about that. You are not going to be able to please everybody. You will be happier, okay? But then, if you can stop pissing off everybody, that will be fine as well, right? It will be better. You need to find a balance. So try to locate those major likes, major preferences that your group has, for many different reasons. If you've been with your group for a long time, or for some time, or you get to know them, or you're able to talk to another teacher who already taught them before, let's say that it's going to be a little bit easier to determine those likes and dislikes, right? And try to go for it. Just try to go for the one that has the biggest amount of people, right? So if there is a topic nowadays that everybody's like willing to do, well, you pick that up, even though knowing that there are some students who wouldn't like it, right? Now, what is the best solution in my experience? Well, something that you wouldn't like, yes, most of you, and it's reading many different books, yes, or having the possibility, or giving the possibility to students to read whatever they want, yes. That is what I do. I give you a whole list of a lot of different books, and each one of you decide which is the one that you prefer, and that's it. In theory, that should make everybody happy. And no, not even doing that, like, people are happy. Because many people would say, oh, but I want to read a book that is not on that list. Okay, so I am open enough sometimes, and if the book is short, or not so long, let's say, and I have the possibility of read it, I'll do it, and I will authorize that person to do that. Not even then people are happy, yes. Sometimes they select the book and they start reading it, and they don't like it, yes, for some reason, because they just thought that the title was nice, or because they watched a movie and had a different idea, or something like that. This happens a lot, for example, with Dracula, yeah. Many people throughout the years have selected for my classes Dracula, expecting to be, a full frenzy of violence and horror and terror. And then when they start reading and realize that it's a bunch of letters that some people send to each other, and that you have to wait for a bunch of 60 or 70 pages before the first act of violence or horror occurs, and that even then it is not, the big thing, well, they say, well, this book sucks, right? So I'm telling you all this for you to know that it's going to be really difficult to satisfy everybody's expectations. But you need to try, yeah, because that's our job. It's really difficult to do it, and very frustrating sometimes, and sometimes, like, people are not thankful enough, but just forget about that, yes? Nobody owes you anything as a teacher. So simply try to do, like, your best in terms of selection. How can I give you, like, anything extra in order for this part of interest? Observe your students, get to know them, try to analyze them in a good way. If you see that some of them like sports, some of them like fiction, horrors, series, whatever, that it's somehow attractive, well, try to select a book that has some sort of thematic, right? Now, you don't need, for example, if you want to give multiple choices, you don't need to give as many as I give, because I know that's diamond, right? It's a lot of things to read. But maybe, what if you give 2 options or 3 options, even 4? Is that crazy? I mean, is it going to take you that long to read for books? I don't think so. Maybe you can use some of the books that you read when you were in the university. Maybe you can use the one that you're doing right now. Yes, so think about it as an investment for your future, right? So that about that, okay? Very well. So in the next video, we're going to continue talking about students' needs and abilities. For now, that was like everything related to the most general aspect of age interests. But we are going to discuss some more specific things into the next videos about student needs and abilities. Okay, so thank you and see you on the next video. Hugs.